Hi guys, this is gsn1.com and I'm here with HTC Desire 10 Lifestyle. This one is a youthful music phone for the youngsters and it comes with gold accents applied all around the black case. It was unveiled in September 2016 and it's priced at around $235. It's the spiritual successor to the HTC Desire 8XX series, basically the HTC Desire 816, 820 and 826 for example. It has an old-ish CPU inside, mid-range specs and high resolution acoustics as confirmed here by this high-res badge. It's available in stone black, polar white, royal blue and also a special Valentine Lux. Now as far as the design is concerned, what you're seeing here is a device made mostly of polycarbonate with some metal edges and these golden accents which some people may fancy, other people may not. What some people consider elegance, others may consider a kitsch. And it's a pretty massive phone even for a device that has a 5.5-inch diagonal. It measures a pretty reasonable 7.7 millimeters in thickness and weighs 155 grams. This makes it about 30 grams lighter than the HTC Desire 826 and also 0.3 millimeters slimmer, so there's that. It's also 0.4 millimeters thicker than the Huawei Nova Plus. It has a pretty okay weight for its size and it has a huge camera protrusion here at the back. Now speaking of the back, let's get to it. It gets smudged very easily with grease and prints and that of course is a minus. The texture feels a bit like the eggshell if you really want a comparison. Since it's a long phone, one-hand usage is pretty much out of the picture. And I have to mention that we got a bunch of comfy buttons here, volume buttons and the power button with these small ridges that makes it easier to use. We got big bezels and in the end it all depends on your taste. If you like the gold accents, you're all set. If you don't, well, you probably consider another version of the phone. Now on the display front, we're getting a 5.5-incher with a super LCD panel, ever center and the 720p resolution. It's 1280 over 720 pixels and there's also Gorilla Glass protection in the mix. Honestly speaking, I wish we got Full HD resolution, but we'll have to deal with 720p. Okay, so there's no video player, so I'm going to have to resort to photos to start playing video, and I'm talking about Google Photos here. So here we go. Let's find our usual test clip and see what's happening there. Okay, so the brightness is not exactly impressive and neither is the contrast. We got poor vertical viewing angles, as you can well see. The horizontal ones are okay, but the vertical ones, well, not that good. The colors are pretty decently calibrated, so at least there's that. Now let's see what other aspects we tested about the screen. So we got the pixel setup here. It's RGB stripes pixel setup, and then we measure the brightness. Being totally disappointed, we achieved 232 lux units, which is incredibly low even for a mid-ranger. It's almost the last model we tested all time from all the smartphones. It only beats the Xperia E4 and the Coolpad Modena and scored below the Asus Zenfone 2 Laser and the LTV 1S. Now let's see what kind of settings this screen has to offer us. Okay, so we go here and try to find the display section. Display gestures and buttons. So we got auto rotate, font size, brightness level. There's color temperature with the option to make it colder or warmer or reset to default. We go back, we got a screen timeout, daydream, navigation button, backlight, recent apps button and media gesture, as well as motion launch gestures, which are shown here. Double tap to wake, swipe to unlock, swipe left to go home and swipe right to launch blink feed. So in the end, a pretty disappointing screen, and aside from the realistic colors, nothing too impressive or good here. Now as far as the other hardware is concerned, let's see what we're dealing with here. So we get a pretty old processor. It's the quad-core Snapdragon 400. It's a 28nm chip from 2013, so yes, it's old, and it has the GPU, well, it's the Adreno 305, accompanied by 3GB of RAM and 32GB of storage, and of course there is also a micro SD card slot in the mix. Okay, so I have to say that in spite of having 3GB of RAM, which should be enough, we did experience some lag when having multiple apps open and when wanting to open up a new app or when exiting an app. So there was lag every once in a while, which is of course not a good thing. Now when it comes to gaming, we played our usual benchmark game, which is Riptide GP Renegade, and sadly we also met with lag here, which is not a good thing. Okay, so let's see what's happening. Taking quite a bit to load, that's not a good sign. You can find some lag in the menus. And let's see what a race looks like. I don't know if you can tell from this small screen, but if you look up closely, you see that the textures are not very impressive. If you look at the water and the ski jets, you can actually see that they're being a bit squared, a bit squarish. And there's a bit of a frame rate drop here compared to other devices I've played with recently. Everything is a bit choppy, a bit jagged, so I wanted a bit better from this mid-range phone. After all, young people do gaming, and this is a phone for young people, so there's that problem. Okay, so with some lag found by us, let's see what the synthetic tests will tell us. And that means benchmarks all the way. So let's see if the findings of the performance are confirmed by benchmarks. I'm going to start off with quadrant, and this is our scoring quadrant. It's on the level of the AllView P8 Energy and below the Galaxy A3 2016, not very impressive. Then in Antutu 6, let's see where that led. This is a very modest score, especially in the 3D department, and this score is at around the level of the Galaxy J5 2016, but below the Huawei G8, for example. And then comes what I like to call the Gamers Benchmark, which is 3D Mark iStorm Unlimited, a very low score. It's even below the HTC Desire 816 that we tested a few years ago, but at least it beats the LG AKA. So overall, not impressive. I've seen phones that cost half of the price of this model and get better performance, so that's a bummer. And also, speaking of hardware and such things, too bad we do not have a fingerprint scanner. We also did a temperature test and went over the limit of 40 degrees Celsius, which is basically overheating. So 41.3 degrees Celsius after playing the game you saw before, which is Riptide GP Renegade, and after running the intensive benchmark GFX bench, 35.3 degrees Celsius. This is not overheating, but the gaming part is. So far so not so good. And as far as the battery is concerned, we're getting a lithium ion unit with a capacity of 2700 mAh. It already sounds kind of small for a 5.5 incher, and on paper we are being promised 8 hours of video playback or 24 hours of 3G talk time, as well as fast charging apparently. Now let's ditch this and see what the actual device offered us. So I'm talking here among others about the continuous HD video playback in a loop. So let's find that. Okay, so here we go. We achieved a time of 8 hours and 30 minutes of continuous HD video playback, which is okay-ish, let's say. At least it surpasses the Sony Xperia Z5 and the AllView P8 Energy Mini, but score below the Huawei Honor 5X and the first generation Galaxy A5 from Samsung. Now the test that matters more is the PC Mark 1, the one that simulates continuous usage. This time it's only 5 hours 33 minutes. It's quite weak. It's actually placed on the 81st spot all time from all the phones we've tested. It only beats the likes of the LG G4 and OnePlus One, which may sound good, but it also scores below the Huawei Honor 7 and the Verni Tor. The charging requires 2 hours and 35 minutes, which is rather long, but at least superior to the Huawei G8 and Sony Xperia M5. Now, of course, we also have settings that are related to the battery, power, and we got battery optimization, which is basically those from Marshmallow. As you can see, it takes quite a bit to charge, to load up I mean. And then we got power saver, which optimizes battery life, and extreme power saving, which triggers a special UI based on tiles and only using access to the basic features like calling, texting, and so forth. In the end, a mixed experience. While the video playback time is reasonable, the continuous one is not satisfying and the charging is a bit long. Now off to the acoustics. We get 24-bit high-resolution acoustics, BoomSound technology and hi-fi speakers, as well as Dolby stuff. One of the speakers is here in the earpiece and the other one is here, very generous, at least with the speaker holes. Okay, so now let's see what music player we're dealing with. Sadly, HTC did not include its own music player, so I'm going to have to rely on Play Music from Google. And at the top we got the earpiece, at the bottom there's a big speaker. And now let's actually listen to some music. And by the way, just in case you're wondering, no, there is no equalizer here, sadly, which once again, for a music phone, for the young people, is a bummer. Let's listen to music. Okay, so I just switched between the theater mode and the music mode. Of course, one is meant for the movies rather, and the other one is meant for music. Anyway, the experience was reasonably loud and clear, no distortion, good voice and a well calibrated sound, plus an okay bass. And sadly, in spite of the nice real world experience, it was not mimicked by the decibel meter test. So at the back of the phone we achieved 73.3 decibels, disappointing, while at the front we achieved 74.5 decibels, once again a letdown. Anything that's inferior to 80 decibels is a disappointment. These were achieved with our audio sample test, while the game Riptide GP Renegade propelled us to 82.1 decibels, still not impressive. It sounds louder in real life. At least it beats the iPhone 6s and HTC Desire 820, but scores below the HTC Desire 816. Now, if you want special high-resolution acoustics headphones, those can be bought separately. These are the basic headphones, not the high-resolution ones. These are the ones that come with the phone. They're not exactly my favorite, not very comfy in the ear. They have a rather rigid structure, I mean the design, but at least they have a flat wire that does not get tangled. They have a small remote, and in the end I have to say they're very loud, actually very loud. They got a good bass and a nice isolation, so that's nice. We also have FM radio. In the end we get mixed acoustics. I was expecting to be blown away, especially since HTC promotes this phone as a music phone. Now, as far as the camera is concerned, we get a 13 megapixel back shooter with LED flash, BSI, and also autofocus plus f2.2 aperture. For the selfies, 5 megapixel shooter, BSI, f2.8 aperture, and 33.7mm focal length. Now let's see how long it takes to open up the camera app. Not very long, that was a pretty fast opening. And that's the only thing that's fast about the camera. Got a slow focus, both manual focus and autofocus, also very slow picture taking, so still processing, and that was not fast, but the zoom is rather fluid, I would say. Okay, now as far as the options are concerned, we get this exposure slider here to play with, and here we get the main options like photo, panorama, video, selfie photo, selfie video, and the settings. We got a timer, we got a resolution and aspect, and the settings are rather basic: touch, auto exposure, grid, geotagging. Extra options, nothing fancy, storage and all that. Okay, so you may be thinking that there are very few options here. There are no modes, no extra options, no quirky stuff. You cannot tweak the let's say white balance, the ISO, the shutter, or I haven't found them. So as you can see, not many complex options here, so those are lacking. Anyways, let's see what the gallery is all about. We've taken quite a few shots using this camera, so let's check them out. Over 100 as usual. We start off during the daytime with a gallery taken in mid-December. Somehow it was a sunny day. Do not ask me how, it just happened. Okay, so I have to say from the get-go, I am not impressed by these shots. I keep being reminded that HTC Desire 816 and 820 were reasonable, but this one somehow even seems to be worse than those. Anyway, we start off with a panorama that's pretty well done, nice clarity and nice colors, although the resolution is kind of small, 7970 over 690 pixels. The clarity is okay, but I have to say that some of the shots we recorded here were not very clear and experienced some blur. We did take quite a few good close-ups, and this is a sample of HDR, which is really doing its thing this time. It's quite good, and as I said before, solid close-ups. And I would have to say that the colors are pretty well calibrated, at least in this series of first shots. Somehow we managed to burn the background in a few pictures and experience a pretty strange dynamic range. In general, I was happy with the clarity and with the reasonable level of detail for a 13 megapixel camera on a mid-range phone. Good focus in close-ups, solid texture of all these toys, and when it comes to the focus, well, I'm content with it. Even with the sun in front of us, things were pretty well texture wise. Now we also did some selfies, which I have to say are, let's say, reasonable, not more than that. The texture of the skin and hair is okay, but the background is very blurry and has some strange colors. Now, after some minor compliments, we did run into some ghosting and blurring, which I was not happy with, and some of the colors felt a bit washed out. This is another attempt at selfies with a very strange hue. It's true that the sun was setting, and everybody knows how tricky the sunset light can be, but once again, the colors and close-ups are good, otherwise not very impressive. One of the best things about the phone, as I said before, is the focus, and we actually play with it here, focusing on the background and on the first scenario, as you can see here. So foreground and background alternated with the focus, one of the attributes of the phone that is quite okay. Too bad for the washed out shots, too bad for the blurred shots, and some strange selfie colors. I remember once again the quality of the HTC Desire 816 shots, and I wonder what happened to that. Meanwhile, the HTC Desire 820 had a tendency to burn shots, so there's that. In the end, this phone feels below most of the Asus Zenfone 2 phones from last year, and at about the level of, let's say, Huawei Honor 4X, if you really want a comparison, not even the 5X, so that's a problem for HTC, even for a mid-ranger. Those are daytime shots. Now let's see the nighttime shots. Okay, so here we go. These are the nighttime pictures. Let's take them one by one. Sadly, bad news here as well. We got huge lights, ghosting, there's a bit of grain, we got a blue and violet hue. The objects have a pretty okay texture. I'm talking about the statues and the buildings, the churches. The colors are not impressive, and I think that my own iPhone 5 can do better at night, to be honest. So in the end, not impressive, some artifacts and some problems, and you cannot even make out this building if you start to zoom in. At least the lighting was okay and the colors were, let's say, passable, although I did criticize them before. Now these are the photos. Time to see how this camera handled the videos. Okay, so we filmed in MP4 format, Full HD, 30 frames per second and a 21 megapixel bitrate, and the results, well, they go something like this. Good microphone, pretty good exposure change, so-so colors, at least there is no focus problem. The images seem a bit too vivid for December, and when you zoom in, you'll see a lot of detail loss. Frankly speaking, I've seen worse, so not exactly the worst camera, that's a thing at least. However, the statement "I've seen worse" is not good by HTC standards, which used to provide better cameras on its mid-rangers. Here you can clearly see that we're losing a lot of quality, so that's a bummer. It's not far from the disappointing video capture of the HTC Desire 820, but it's slightly superior, at least in the focus and clarity area. Now that's video capture during the day. Of course, we have more shots and you'll see them in the full text review. We even face the wind pretty decently. It's a December, strong wind, but the hue here totally unrealistic. Anyways, let's go to the night time, and here we descended to 19 frames per second and everything was blurry, foggy, yellow, and the colors were totally off. It would even feel poor by, let's say, 2014 standards, so that's an issue. Aside from the microphone and, let's say, the clarity in some instances, you can ignore the camera's video capture and the photo capture. Aside from the colors, focus and close-ups, well, you can also ignore that. Anyway, it's time to test other aspects, like, let's say, the web browser. The pre-installed web browser here is Chrome, and let's access gsndon.com and see what happens. It's supposed to be fast, it's Chrome after all, but it's probably the CPU dragging it down, and dragging it down a lot. Anyway, the benchmarks confirm it. I'm talking about the Velamo and SunSpider results, which are very poor here. Sadly, we confirm the behavior of the browser. Okay, now as far as the virtual keyboard is concerned, I do not even like that. For some reason, the keys are awkwardly spaced. You do not have swipe. Well, maybe you can activate it. Anyway, I'm not very happy with the spacing of the keys, and apparently it's a third-party keyboard. Now, on the connectivity front, let's see what we're dealing with here. Okay, so this phone is available with a dual SIM setup. If you buy the dual SIM version with nano SIM card slots, there's GPS and GLONASS, there's 4G LTE of the category 4 kind, Bluetooth 4.1, Wi-Fi BGN, there's micro USB 2.0 here at the bottom, and as far as the calls go, we get a pretty okay signal, good noise cancelling, but the calls are not exactly loud, they should be a bit louder. And we also have speed dial here. Okay, so we also did a speed test since we're talking about connectivity, and let's see what that produced. So these are the results we achieved. On Wi-Fi we got up to 52 megapixel download speeds, which is unimpressive, 25 megapixel upload, also unimpressive, while the 4G it was pretty good at 101 megapixel download and 46 megapixel upload. I expected a bit more from the Wi-Fi, so there's that. By the way, we also have NFC on this phone. Now as far as the software goes, let's see what we're running on. It's of course Marshmallow, but let's see what flavor. So it's Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow with HTC Sense on top. The multitasking is done like this, using the carousel and the option to clear all. And the leftmost home screen is dedicated to Blink feed that shows the information as styles. You can include YouTube videos, highlights, News Republic stuff, and you can also add your Twitter feed, your LinkedIn stuff, Google Plus, Under Armour record for your fitness sessions, and even mealtime recommendations. Now if you keep the home screen pressed, you'll get options like theme, wallpaper, widgets, edit page, what's new, and sense home settings. The themes are here, and you are being sent to a theme store, which includes some nice items. You can categorize them like this, you can look stuff up, and you can create your own theme, pick colors from an image, and then play with it as you please. Okay, so aside from the main theme, there's also a special theme, the one that lets you play with a freestyle layout by moving the stickers and widgets all around with various sizes, and I do mean various. You can actually go crazy with the sizes for those widgets. Another concept that you may be familiar with is Sense Home. It's a special widget we placed here, and it displays separate sets of icons and apps for the going out segment, for the home area, and for the work area. So if it feels that you're at work or at home, it displays certain icons. If it feels that you're going out, the icons will change. That's the idea, and of course the apps too. Now let's see what else is happening here. In the settings front, you get the option to personalize the phone's looks by changing the wallpapers, widgets, managing the home screen pages, changing the theme, editing the theme, and a variety of other options like the keyboard car and a font. Now if you want to edit the theme, you can change the layout, wallpaper, and a lot of stuff, even the icons and the ringtones. And if you go here, you can change the layout to freestyle layout. This sends you to this area where you can experiment with these themes. Keep in mind, what you're seeing here are stickers and widgets. As you can see, they have crazy form factors. They can be enlarged and moved anywhere on the screen. So that's the freestyle in a nutshell. Now as far as the pre-installed apps go, I counted them all. There's 40 of them, quite a few, but luckily you can pick and choose and uninstall any one of them. If I want to uninstall this one, well, I got the option here and I can get rid of Under Armour. So that's one example. Otherwise, pretty basic setup. There's Google Drive, Facebook, Flashlight, FM radio, HTC Help, News Republic. There's Under Armour, there's productivity through sheets and slides, TouchPal, there's Twitter, weather, YouTube, and Zoe video editor, which you may be familiar with or maybe not. Basically, you can choose a series of photos and a video, tap OK, and then add a music and a theme, and you get a highlight of your vacation. Okay, so that's Zoe in a nutshell. In the end, in spite of the many apps, at least you can uninstall many of them. One of my biggest regrets on the phone is the fact that we do not have a fingerprint scanner. Now we're off to the verdict about the HTC Desire 10 Lifestyle. On the Pro side, well, it has a pretty okay build, and the screen has a pretty well calibrated colors. The UI is highly customizable. We got an okayish video playback time, talking about the battery here. The acoustics are good in real life, no matter what the decibel meter says. The headphones are rather solid. We got good focusing and close-ups for the main camera, and there's lots of uninstallable apps. Now these are the pros. On the con side, we got this kitschy contour, golden edges some people may not like. There's the very low brightness screen. There's a bit of lag and a bit of overheating in games. There's no fingerprint scanner. The continuous usage is disappointing. We got a long charging, excuse me, and the volume measured by the decibel meter is quite low compared to the expectations and promotions. There are too few camera options, the camera is generally not impressive, and finally I'm talking about the low light capture, especially. That was totally a bummer on the video and photo front. In the end, the Desire 10 Lifestyle feels a bit like a letdown. There are too many compromises here to keep the price low, and it could be even lower if you really want to get sold. This phone is actually worth $150 in my book for its poor battery, display, camera and acoustics not exactly being the best. If you like gold accents and okay music and okay close-ups, you may like the phone. Otherwise, well, maybe not. Maybe pick something else. That's half the price. This is it from gsno.com. This has been the review of the HTC Desire 10 Lifestyle. Bye bye.